In the dark and turbulent years of the Second World War, few names inspired as much fear as Heinrich Himmler. As Reichsfuhrer SS, he stood among the most powerful figures in Nazi Germany, second only to Adolf Hitler in overseeing the machinery of terror that engulfed Europe. Under his authority, concentration camps expanded, police forces operated with ruthless efficiency, and the Holocaust claimed the lives of millions of innocent people. Yet behind the image of one of history's most notorious architects of genocide existed another world, hidden from public view. In private, Himmler wrote affectionate letters to his wife, discussed family matters, and maintained the appearance of domestic normality. Standing beside him throughout these years was a woman whose life remains overshadowed by her husband's crimes. She was neither an outspoken political leader nor a passive bystander, entirely detached from the ideology that shaped Nazi Germany. She was Margarete Himmler, a devoted wife, committed Nazi supporter, and controversial figure whose loyalty to her husband never wavered, even as the Third Reich collapsed around them. Margaret Boden was born on September 9, 1893, in the village of Gonchar, near Bromberg, a region that now lies within modern-day Poland, but was then part of the German Empire. She grew up in a relatively comfortable household as one of 5 children born to Hans Boden, a prosperous landowner, and his wife Elfriede. Her upbringing reflected the conservative values common among many middle-class German families of the era: discipline, order, and a strong sense of national identity. As Europe descended into chaos with the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, Margaret chose a profession dedicated to caring for others. She trained as a nurse and spent the war years working in hospitals treating wounded soldiers. Following Germany's defeat in 1918, she continued her medical work at a German Red Cross hospital. These experiences shaped her identity as a capable and disciplined woman accustomed to responsibility. Her first marriage ended unsuccessfully and produced no children. Determined to establish herself independently, Margaret used financial assistance from her father to invest in a private nursing clinic in Berlin. For a woman of her generation, this represented a significant professional achievement. She demonstrated organizational skill and ambition, qualities that would later define her role within her marriage and social circles. Everything changed in 1926 when she met Heinrich Himmler at a hotel lobby in the Bavarian resort town of Bad Reichenhall. At the time, Himmler was still an emerging political figure within Adolf Hitler's National Socialist movement. Socially awkward and often insecure about his appearance, he struggled with relationships. According to accounts from contemporaries, Margaret became the first woman with whom he experienced a serious romantic connection. Their relationship was built upon shared interests and ideological convictions. Himmler admired Margaret's blonde hair and blue eyes, characteristics that aligned with Nazi racial ideals. Beyond physical attraction, they bonded over their mutual enthusiasm for agriculture, medicinal herbs, homeopathy, and orderly domestic life. More significantly, they shared deeply anti-Semitic beliefs that mirrored the growing ideology of the Nazi Party. Evidence from their correspondence reveals the extent of Margaret's prejudices. In a letter written in June 1928, she expressed openly anti-Semitic views regarding a Jewish colleague associated with her Berlin clinic. Such sentiments were not merely reflections of her husband's influence, but represented convictions she held independently. The couple married in July 1928, although the union was not universally welcomed. Margaret was nearly 7 years older than Heinrich, divorced and Protestant. Himmler's conservative Catholic family strongly disapproved of the marriage. None of his relatives attended the wedding ceremony, leaving the bride's father and brother to serve as witnesses. Although the family eventually accepted Margaret's presence in Heinrich's life, they maintained emotional distance from her throughout the marriage. Soon after their wedding, Margaret joined the Nazi Party, demonstrating her commitment to both her husband's ambitions and the political movement they supported. In August 1929, they welcomed their only biological child, a daughter named Gudrun. Later, they also became foster parents to Gerhard von Ahe, the son of an SS officer who died shortly after the Nazi seizure of power. Margaret sold her share in the Berlin clinic and relocated with Heinrich to Waldtrudering near Munich. Using the proceeds from the sale, they purchased a home and attempted to establish a modest agricultural enterprise. Financially, the early years were difficult. Heinrich's income from party work remained limited, and their efforts to supplement it through farming ventures proved largely unsuccessful. As the Nazi Party rose to power during the 1930s, however, the Himmler's circumstances improved dramatically. Heinrich's growing influence within the SS brought prestige, wealth, and privileges. Like many high-ranking Nazi officials, the family benefited from property and valuables confiscated from victims of persecution and genocide. Margaret increasingly assumed a social role within the elite circles of the SS leadership. As the wife of the Reichsfuhrer SS, she technically occupied the highest-ranking position among SS spouses. She organized social gatherings and hosted afternoon teas for the wives of senior officials, believing it her responsibility to maintain unity and decorum within this exclusive community. Despite her efforts, Margaret struggled to gain acceptance. Many women within Nazi elite society found her difficult and overbearing. Lena Heydrich, wife of Reinhard Heydrich, one of the principal architects of the Holocaust, reportedly disliked her intensely. Their relationship became characterized by rivalry and mutual resentment. Margaret's appearance and personality frequently became subjects of ridicule among other SS wives. Some described her as humorless, rigid, and obsessed with social status. Critics portrayed her as a domineering figure who sought recognition based on her husband's position rather than personal charisma. These tensions highlighted the complex social dynamics that existed even within the highest ranks of the Nazi establishment. Several contemporaries suggested that Heinrich Himmler behaved very differently at home than he did in public. While he projected authority and ruthlessness as head of the SS, acquaintances described him as surprisingly submissive in his marriage. Baldur von Schirach later claimed that Himmler consistently deferred to his wife's wishes in domestic matters. Gebhard Himmler, Heinrich's older brother, characterized Margaret as emotionally distant yet devoted. Although he acknowledged her tendency toward criticism and complaint, he also recognized her unwavering loyalty to her husband and dedication to family responsibilities. Unfortunately, that devotion was not equally returned. In 1936, Heinrich Himmler employed a young secretary named Hedwig Pothest. Over time, their professional relationship developed into a romantic affair. By 1938, Pothest had become his mistress, eventually giving birth to 2 children, a son, Helga, and a daughter, Nanette Dorothea. Margaret learned of the affair by early 1941 at the latest. The revelation deeply humiliated her. Despite the betrayal, she chose not to pursue divorce. Whether motivated by social expectations, loyalty, practicality, or emotional attachment, she remained legally married to Heinrich for the rest of his life. Although his marriage deteriorated, Heinrich maintained a close relationship with Gudrun, his daughter. He affectionately nicknamed her Puppy, meaning little doll, and regularly contacted her despite his demanding responsibilities. His visits home increasingly focused on preserving this father-daughter bond. Meanwhile, Margaret dedicated herself to wartime service through the German Red Cross. Beginning in 1939, she supervised hospitals within the Berlin-Brandenburg military district. Her position required extensive travel throughout territories occupied by German forces. A diary entry from March 1940 provides disturbing insight into her worldview. After visiting occupied Poland, she expressed contemptuous opinions about Jews and Poles, describing them in dehumanizing terms and emphasizing the necessity of imposing order. Such remarks reflected not only prevailing Nazi propaganda, but also her personal acceptance of racist ideology. Margaret eventually attained the rank of Oberstführerin, equivalent to colonel, within the German Red Cross. However, repeated conflicts with medical staff under her supervision ultimately led her to resign from this position. She subsequently withdrew to a quieter existence in the Bavarian town of Gmund. Even as Germany's military situation deteriorated during the final years of the war, Margaret's faith in her husband remained steadfast. In correspondence with family members during February 1945, she expressed admiration for Heinrich's leadership responsibilities and confidence in his abilities. Her words suggested unwavering support despite mounting evidence of Nazi defeat. Her final contact with Heinrich occurred in April 1945 as the Third Reich approached collapse. Assisted by SS personnel, Margaret fled with Gudrun to South Tyrol in northern Italy, hoping to evade advancing Allied forces. Germany officially surrendered on May 8, 1945, bringing the European war to an end. 5 days later, Allied authorities arrested Margaret and Gudrun in the city of Bolzano. During subsequent interrogations conducted in Italy and France, investigators sought to determine Margaret's knowledge of Nazi crimes. She consistently portrayed herself as uninformed regarding her husband's official activities. Questioners described her as possessing a narrow outlook focused primarily on domestic concerns. When discussing responsibility for atrocities committed under Nazi rule, Margaret shifted blame toward Adolf Hitler, arguing that individuals such as her husband had merely followed orders issued by the Führer. This defense echoed explanations commonly employed by former Nazi officials attempting to distance themselves from personal accountability. After the war, Margaret insisted she had known nothing about the full extent of Nazi crimes. Historians, however, have questioned these claims. Unlike many wives of senior Nazi leaders, Margaret visited concentration camp facilities during the war years. She inspected the extensive herb gardens maintained at Dachau concentration camp, an enterprise connected to Heinrich Himmler's interest in medicinal plants and alternative medicine. She also toured Ravensbrück, the concentration camp established primarily for women prisoners. Although direct evidence proving her detailed knowledge of systematic extermination remains limited, these visits make it difficult to accept claims of complete ignorance. Exposure to such institutions would almost certainly have provided some awareness of the brutal realities underpinning the Nazi regime. Margaret and Gudrun later testified during proceedings associated with the Nuremberg trials. Following their release in November 1946, Margaret expressed resentment regarding their detention, suggesting that both she and her daughter had suffered punishment for actions committed by Heinrich. In the decades following the war, Margaret lived largely outside public attention. Unlike some former Nazi associates who openly defended the regime or participated in post-war political movements, she maintained a relatively private existence. She died on August 25, 1967, in Munich, West Germany, at the age of 73. Among the historical records she left behind was a diary spanning the years 1937 to 1945. Preserved today at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., these writings provide historians with valuable insight into the attitudes and perspectives of individuals connected to the highest levels of Nazi leadership. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Margaret Himmler's story lies in the contrast between ordinary domestic affection and extraordinary moral blindness. In one letter to Heinrich, she wrote of her happiness in being loved by a good man who cherished his evil wife. Those words continue to provoke difficult questions. How could someone view a man responsible for overseeing the deaths of millions as fundamentally good? How could devotion coexist with participation in, or indifference toward, one of history's greatest crimes? Margaret Himmler was neither the principal architect of Nazi atrocities, nor an innocent observer detached from events unfolding around her. She occupied a morally complex position as a loyal spouse, committed ideological supporter, and beneficiary of a criminal regime. Her life illustrates how ordinary relationships, personal loyalties, and deeply held prejudices can exist alongside unimaginable cruelty. The story of Margaret Himmler serves as a reminder that history is not shaped solely by notorious leaders whose names dominate textbooks. It is also influenced by those who support them, excuse them, remain loyal to them, or choose silence when confronted with injustice. In examining her life, we gain a deeper understanding of the social environment that enabled the Third Reich to function. The Holocaust was not perpetrated by a single individual acting alone. It depended upon networks of administrators, supporters, sympathizers, and family members who, through conviction, loyalty, fear, or willful ignorance, became part of a system responsible for immense human suffering. Margaret Himmler remains one of those troubling figures from history. Her story offers no easy conclusions or comforting explanations. Instead, it challenges us to confront difficult truths about complicity, ideology, and the capacity of ordinary people to rationalize extraordinary evil. Remembering such histories is essential not only to honor the victims of Nazi persecution, but also to recognize the importance of moral responsibility. The choices individuals make, whether through action or silence, shape the societies in which they live. Margaret Himmler's life stands as a sobering testament to that enduring lesson.